Okay guys, so we're now on unit 1.6 and we're going to start with just a little reminder about long division. So we've got 21,355 divided by 15. So first thing is we know that 15 goes in 21 one time, so we're going to make that adjustment and we're going to subtract it. We get 6, bring down our 3. 15 goes into 63 4 times, which is going to give us 60. We're going to subtract that again to get our number 3, drop our 5 down. So we've got 35, which will go in 2 times, and we'll end up with 30. We'll subtract our 5 once again and bring down our 5, and we'll get 55. So 15 will go into 55 3 times because we've got 55 subtracted by 45. And when we get that, we end up with our remainder of 10 because we've gone through all of our spots. So our final answer, which I'm going to put in blue, is going to be 1,423 with a remainder of 10 over 15. So that's just a little reminder on how we do long division. But now we're going to be dividing polynomials with long division. So we're going to walk through these steps on how we're going to do that. So first step is we're going to make sure that the inside and outside polynomials are in descending order, which means that it needs to be your biggest one, your x squared, then your x, then your term. If you're missing a term, so if you have an x to the third, then an x, then a zero, and then a number, you're going to have to replace it with a 0 term so that you can do the division correctly. Anytime that you have to fill in a space, we're going to do a smiley face for that spacer. And I'll show you that on our first example. Then we're going to divide each different part. We'll multiply. Then you'll subtract, so you're going to basically draw a line and change your sign because we have to do that every single time. And then we'll end up with our last step, which is going to be repeat until our remainder is found. So that's all we're going to do on this first part before we move into our actual parts. So now we're going to do our first example. So we have x squared plus 3 plus 3x minus 12. So that's going to be inside of our division. So we've got x squared plus 3x minus 12. And this is going to be divided by x minus 3. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to see, we have our first x squared. We're going to put a spacer right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to see what is going to go into our numbers. So the first thing we're going to look at is that x squared and our x. So x times x is going to give me my x squared. X times negative 3 is going to give me negative 3x. So we're subtracting both of these. So we're trying to find the opposite sign every time we subtract. So we distribute that negative in, and we get plus, plus. So we get negative x squared. So that's going to cancel our x squareds. And then we got 3x plus 3x. So we end up with a 6x. Bring down our negative 12. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing. So how are we going to get 6x from our numbers? Well, we're going to add 6. Because 6 times x is going to be 6x. And then 6 times negative 3 is going to be negative 18. So again, we've got to distribute that negative sign in. And we're going to get negative 6x plus 18. So those two are going to cancel. And we'll end up with 6. So now we've got plus 6 over x negative 3. So that's going to be our remainder. So we end up with x plus 6 plus 6 over x minus 3. And that's how we're going to do long division each and every time. So now we're going to work on our letter B. So we've got x to the third minus 13x minus 12. So I told y'all this before, but we're going to have a remainder because we don't have that in there. So this is about to change what we have. So we've got x to the third, and we're going to have that 0 number. So we're going to have x to the third plus 0x squared minus 13x minus 12. So we put that spacer in for the first one, and then we have x to the third. We're going to do x squared because x plus times x squared will give me x to the third. So x squared minus negative 4 is going to be negative x to the squared. Distribute our negative in. So we'll end up with canceling those, and we'll get 4x squared. We're going to drop our negative 13x. So then how do we get 4x squared? Well, we're going to do 4 times 4x. So 4x times x, that's going to be simple. We're just going to have 4x squared. Then 4x minus 4, that'll give us negative 16x. So then those will cancel once we distribute our negative in. And we'll cancel those, and we'll get 3x. Bring down our negative 12. And we're going to end up doing the same thing. So how are we going to get to 3x? Well, that's just going to be times 3. So we'll have 3x minus 12. So then again, we have to distribute that negative in. So we'll end up with a negative 3x plus 12, which means both will cancel, and we'll end up with no remainder. So our answer is just going to be what's up top, x squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so we're going to look at C now. That's 4x plus 10x to the third plus 20x squared minus 3. So first thing y'all should notice on that is that it's missing a basic x term. So we're going to have 4x, we're going to have x to the fourth plus 10x to the third, 20x squared. Then, as again I missed it on here, we're going to do plus 0x, then minus your 3. All of this under your division sign, divided by x squared plus 2x plus 1. Always make sure you have that 0 term in there every single time. So now we're going to figure out how to get to x to the fourth from our x squared. We're going to fill two spacers because we're not going to have an x to the fourth, nor are we going to have an x to the third. So we're trying to still get to that 4x. So it's going to be 2x times 2x to get us to that x to the fourth. So we're going to put our x squared right above our 20x squared. Then we're going to go back up to the far part. So x to the fourth plus, and then we look at our 2x plus 1, 2x, so that's going to be 2x to the third. Then we're going to look at our 1, and that's going to just be a basic 1x squared. So again, we've got to distribute that negative into each different part. So it's going to be negative 4x, negative 2x squared, and negative x squared. So we'll end up with our 8x to the third, and then a 19x squared. There we go. X squared. So we're going to do the same thing now. We're going to bring down our 0 term and bring down our negative 3. So now we're going to look at how to get to 8x to the third. So that's just going to be 8x. So 8x times x squared, 8x squared. 8x times 2x is going to be 16x squared. And then 8x times 1 is just going to be 8x. So then again, we have our whole thing, and we're going to distribute that 0 in each time. So, that negative in. So negative 8x, then we'll end up with 3x squared, and we'll have a negative 8x. Then we're going to bring down that negative 3 for our last step. So how are we going to get to 3x squared? Just multiply by 3. So plus 3. Multiply by 3 on each part. So 2x times 3 is going to give me plus 6x. 1 times 3 is going to give me plus 3. So distribute that negative into both sides, all the different parts. So those are going to cancel on my first one, the 3x and the negative 3x squared. Then we've got 8, so we'll end up with negative 14x. Then we're going to have just negative 14x because we end up with plus 6 on this one. Okay, so negative 14x minus 6, so we end up with x squared plus 8x plus 3 with a remainder of negative 14x minus 6 over x squared plus 2x plus 1. So again, I know this is super tedious, but you've got to go through each different step and make sure you're not missing anything before you move on. So now we're looking at D. So we've got 2x to the third plus 9x squared plus 14x plus 5. So you notice that's not the same thing that you see above. We're having to put these in descending order. So we've got our x to the third, our x to the second, then we'll have our x term, then we'll have our number. So 2x to the third plus 9x squared plus our 14x, then plus our 5. So then we're going to divide by our 2x plus 1. So how do we get from 2x to 2x to the third? Remember, we're going to put our smiley face for the spacer on each part that we're not going to get to. So how are we going to get there? So we got 2x times x squared will give us 2x to the third. So then 1 times x squared is going to give us just x squared. Distribute our negative, and we get those canceled, and we get 8x squared. We're going to drop that 14x. Then we're going to try to get to 8x. So that should be 4x. So we'll get 8x squared times 4 plus 4x. Distribute the negative. We'll have negative on both. Okay, and then we'll cancel those, and we'll end up with 10x. Drop our 5. And we're going to end up doing times 5, which is going to be 10x plus 5. Distribute our negative on both, and we end up with a remainder of 0. So our final answer is going to be x squared plus 4x plus 5. Alright, so now we're going to go to our last problem, and it's a word problem. So the volume of a cylinder is modeled by the function v of x equals x to the third plus 10x squared plus 20x minus 3. So we're going to use long division for this. So the expression we're going to use is b of x equals x plus 3. So hint, a cylinder is v equals b to the h. So we know what b is, and we know what v is. So we're going to divide our v by our h. So our 3 x to the third plus 10x squared, all of that to find there. So we're going to put our spacer. We're going to do x squared. So that again is x third, and then x squared plus times 3 is going to be 3x squared. Subtract, distribute our negative. Then we're going to end up with 7x squared. Drop down our 20x. To find that, we're going to do times 7x, so plus 7x. So we're going to end up with 7x squared plus 21x, so distribute our negative in, so negative on both. Then we'll end up with negative 1x, drop down our negative 3, and to find our x, we just need a negative 1. So it'll be negative 1x minus 3, and then we'll distribute our negative in as well. And this is actually going to mean that we're going to have positive and positive, so they'll both cancel. And we'll end up with 0, which means that our final answer is going to be x squared plus 7x minus 1 units. Because we weren't given a full thing, but because this is a word problem, we have to put units.